I am reading many posts and seeing numerous videos about the amount of sexual activity in relationships being insufficient for men. Is this a problem in all relationships? Do you blame the women for it? How do you handle having sex less frequently than you desire in your relationships? Story 1. No one is coming online posting, "Man, I keep getting just the right amount of sex. What is up with this? I am so fulfilled." You have to take into account the selection bias that people coming online to post are almost always going to be posting problems. Story 2. It's different with everyone and every relationship. All that matters is if you are compatible or not. Story 3. Keep in mind that people who are happy in their relationship seldom post or comment, and you may be reading the opinions of a vocal minority of couples. Mismatched libido is a real issue and varies from couple to couple. Low sexual drive is not exclusive to women. Many men also experience low or zero libido. If it is a problem, the couple should communicate openly about it. Story 4. Just an aside, if you click on 2 or 3 reels of a similar topic, the algorithm will start showing you tons of similar content. Watch a couple of reels about a bad sex life, and suddenly the algorithm will feed you as many different videos like that as it can. Social media builds an echo chamber around you, so it is probably not nearly as common as your favorite social media app makes it seem. Story 5. Just as a note, things online are not always a great representation of how things are in the real world. Online, if there is a post about unhappiness with the frequency of sex, unhappy people are more likely to comment on it. Therefore, it gains more traction and gets more attention. In contrast, people who have a fulfilling and happy sex life will not feel the need to comment. Because what are they really going to say? "We have sex often, and it is good." Maybe the occasional answer from somebody who gives a detailed response. It is the same reason when people talk about a relationship going through a rocky patch. Many people who have been in unhappy relationships will say, "Break up with them. They are horrible people." People in healthy long-term relationships are more likely to say, "Work through it." But those responses do not get as much attention as the more extreme ones. To answer your question and comment on your post about blaming your significant other, I feel like that does happen, but it comes from unhappiness. It is not specifically unique to sex. If you ask your significant other to do the dishes and they do not, that will make you unhappy, and in turn, you may blame them for that and other things. This might not be the best example, but I hope you see what I am saying. Matching sex drives is pretty important. I had an ex with an insanely high sex drive, like 3 times a day minimum. Then my next relationship was about once a month. I feel like I could not blame either of them for their sex drives, but it does play a role in compatibility. I learned I can definitely match a 3 times a day sex drive, but once a month was way too infrequent for me to feel fulfilled. As for whether it is a problem in all relationships, no. Remember, posts online are not indicative of real life. But just because it is not a problem does not mean it should not be talked about. Communication is important, especially around intimacy. Talk about it before it even becomes a problem. It can be a problem in many relationships, which is why communication is important. Personally, I do not mind a low sex drive in women. The woman I was with who had a low sex drive, I genuinely believe was asexual but felt obligated to have sex. However, that relationship was complicated because I love physical touch. I can do with less sex as long as we can cuddle, make out, and so on, but she hated physical touch. So that was a lot more complicated than just sex, although once a month was still too infrequent for me. Story 6. There is probably blame to go around for both parties. However, many factors can affect how much people want to have sex. Sex is not the most important thing. Being able to talk to your partner is. If you can communicate with your partner about your issues, then hopefully you can solve them. Story 7. It's the opposite of confirmation bias. People do not go to their social media to update their status with having just the right amount of sex. Story 8. Of my 13 relationships, the frequency of sexual activity was only a problem twice, and both those relationships did not last, in part for that reason. In half the relationships, the women were happy to make love with me if I asked. In the other 6, they initiated about half the time. Sexual compatibility is important. Story 9. My wife, over the course of a few years, has become disinterested in sex. She was never as interested in sex as I was, but it had become a once-a-month occurrence. We are currently in the midst of a divorce. Everyone thinks it is because we fight, but we do not. Everyone believes it is a mutual agreement, but it is not. She is fine with us being sexless. I am not. Story 10. I would say it is a frequent but not universal problem in relationships, and it does not always go one way. Sometimes women want sex more frequently than the men they are with. In a long-term relationship, the libido of both partners often changes with age and life circumstances. The wife may feel like her husband is holding back by not having sex with her every day when they first get married, but after the first child, she may feel it is too much if he wants sex more than once a week. Stereotypically, because testosterone is linked to sex drive, men often want sex more frequently than their partners. In the moment, it is easy for both sides to blame the other, such as, she is withholding affection, or he is an animal who just wants my body. Objectively, it is not something either partner can really control. It is not like we can choose when or how often we get turned on. This is one of those conflicts that successful couples need to learn to navigate with communication, understanding, and compromise. Story 11. It is clearly not a problem in all relationships. Social media is known for magnifying the content that gets the most views, so do not use that as an accurate measurement of anything. Story 12. Not all. I have heard this complaint from both men and women, so my theory is that many end up with a mismatch in this area. Story 13. Our frequency increased significantly in the last couple of years, and I couldn't be happier. In almost 20 years, we averaged about once a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, and during times like pregnancy, sometimes much less. I try not to speak for other situations, but in my own, we communicate extensively about everything. She wasn't always comfortable with that, but we have worked hard to reach a point where we are comfortable sharing everything that needs to be shared. My point is that when you actually communicate each other's needs, it is pretty simple to get what you need. Story 14. Many people settle based on timing and convenience rather than the highest possible compatibility. They expect certain things to improve over time without any evidence of that occurring. Story 15. It's not a problem in all relationships. Men who are satisfied with the frequency of sex in their relationships are not complaining about it online. The belief that men always want sex and women put up with it as the default needs to end. In all my serious relationships, averaged out since libido varies over time, the drive for sex has been about even in both directions. Men as a group and women as a group are not uniform blocks. You cannot ascribe any characteristics en masse to either. My wife, for example, is just as likely to initiate as I am, and either of us is just as likely to not be feeling it. The trick is to not take that as a rejection of you, because it is not. There are all kinds of reasons why people don't feel like it at that particular moment. Now on to some advice from experience. People in long-term relationships are more likely to have more frequent sex if, on the whole, everyone's needs are met and they feel they are in a space where they can relax and feel whole. That doesn't happen out of thin air. It takes work and both partners putting effort into the relationship. For example, if a woman is working a full-time job, comes home to a messy house, and her partner is sitting on the Xbox or PC and immediately asks, "What is for dinner?" Is she feeling relaxed and that her needs are met? You care about and love this woman. Putting aside sex for a second, do you want her to feel like that? Now replace that situation with her getting home. You've thrown a load of washing into the machine, cleaned around, and put a pasta bake in the oven. She can relax and is happier. It costs you half an hour of your time to take some of the shared burden out of life together. This is the woman you love. She's going to feel more relaxed. The same applies the other way. A man works hard all week and is looking forward to spending Saturday afternoon playing on the PC. She drops on him Saturday morning that she invited family without giving him a heads up, and now his day is not what he wanted. Are his needs being met? In summary, on the whole, a relationship where the needs of both partners are being met outside of the bedroom will be a relationship where both partners are happier in the bedroom. It's not rocket science. It's basic empathy for someone you love and good communication. Story 16. It's like air, food, or money. It is not an issue when you are getting enough, but when you are not, it becomes your central preoccupation. Story 17. People do not discuss those things ahead, and it becomes a problem. Sex cannot be ignored, so people do not discuss it, but in the end, it matters most. Story 18. People getting did are not complaining. They are just quietly counting their smug blessings in private. Ask your doctor if getting did is right for you. Story 19. Look, I love intimacy as much as any other person, but even I don't feel like doing that every day. I can have days too where I just don't feel like it. Same for her. The problem begins when we can't seem to find a time where it works for both of us. And at that point, regrettably, one of us has to say yes because otherwise it's just not going to happen, which slowly leads to resentment. I miss my ex sometimes. She had a strong desire for intimacy, but sometimes it was too much to handle. She was open to spontaneous encounters, and whenever I wanted to be intimate, she was always ready. However, there was a problem when sometimes I didn't want to be intimate, and she was persistently trying. It was a bit much. So for me, quantity of intimacy isn't the issue. It's the syncing up. Story 20. It is a growing problem among women as well. Many men are not as interested in their female partners sexually, leading to a disparity. Story 21. Just the ones posting or complaining about it online. I have had relationships where I had the higher sex drive and other relationships where my girlfriend was more willing and ready to go than I was. Story 22. Yes, it is a problem. My view is that the partner with the higher libido tends to see the honeymoon period as the baseline for sexual frequency. The partner with the lower libido inevitably sets a limit for frequency of sex at some point and is unwilling to compromise. From personal experience, going from 2 to 3 times a day to 2 to 3 times a month feels like a bait and switch. Story 23. Many people are in relationships where their sex drives do not match. People prioritize everything except sex when looking for a serious partner, only to be later frustrated when their sex drives do not align. Story 24. Because everyone has a unique sex drive regarding how much sex they want or do not want, it is statistically unlikely that you will find someone who matches you perfectly and that you actually want to date. Sex frequency should not be a big deal unless one side or the other is not close to their ideal. Relationships are about compromise, which most people could learn to do better. Story 25. It's not a problem in all or even most relationships. How it can become a problem is when you have a higher libido than your partner in a monogamous relationship. You want sex, your partner doesn't, and you can't have sex with anyone else because you are in a relationship. One person can end up frequently frustrated. The other person may feel inadequate or hassled. By the way, it can be a man or a woman who wants more sex than their partner. Story 26. I'm guessing, but it feels like a 20 to 80 split. 20% of women actually want it more than their partner, and 80% of men want it more than their partner. I agree that it is a more common issue than most realize. Willingness to communicate about it is one hurdle. The fact that 1 in 4 women have been sexually assaulted is a factor. Mental and physical health issues also play a role. Story 27. While the stereotype is that men want sex more than women, in reality, it is not exclusively a male trait. Many women feel the same way. Mismatched libido, to some degree, is present in every relationship. The key to managing it is honest communication, which can be difficult due to the shame and stigma society places around sexual desire. If you can talk to each other, most situations are navigable. Story 28. The amount of sex is not a problem until you feel like you are not getting enough or you are linking sex with intimacy without the ability to separate the two. If you cannot separate intimacy from sex, you will want more sex than you think you do. Story 29. Making another comment to add that hormonal birth control can affect libido. After I had a baby, I started taking the birth control pill, and it destroyed my sex drive. I had none, and when I had sex, I just didn't really care about it. I stopped taking it after 2 months, and my sex drive came right back. Now we use condoms, and I track my ovulation to avoid any accidents. The pill affects many women, and I don't think they realize it is harming their sex life. It is ironic considering it is designed to allow sex without the risk of pregnancy. Story 30. I was lucky to have sexual intimacy twice a year in my marriage. I am female and had a higher libido than my partner. It was unsatisfactory. He blames me for the lack of sexual intimacy. Story 31. I do not really have a problem with the lack of sex itself. Can happen, and for me, it only happened twice where I was really disinterested in sex. There can be many reasons for it, and I think as long as they are temporary, it is okay even when I don't have sex for some months. However, this is really important, at least for me. There has to be some effort at some point from both partners, but mainly from the partner with low libido to reactivate sex and show interest in rebuilding attraction. Also, the high libido partner should have empathy for the circumstances of the low libido partner, and there needs to be empathy from the low libido partner for the high libido partner. Because not feeling wanted and having that important part missing takes a huge toll on most people. Most of my relationships failed to some extent due to the other person not having empathy for me and not showing any interest in trying to restore the relationship. Lastly, no, I do not hate my girlfriend for not wanting sex. I do not even resent her for not wanting it after a 12-hour shift. But not having empathy for me or interest in trying to change the current state is something I will never understand. Story 32. I was in 2 long-term sexless relationships in my life, totaling over 21 years continuously. I had sex maybe 10 times during that period and no sex at all from 2011 to 2024. After the second relationship ended in 2022, my ex got in touch a year later and asked to get back together. When I asked her to explain the complete lack of sexual connection and interest, she confessed that she had a total denial kink and that she would get herself off for hours at a time thinking about the pain she had caused me. I have been in therapy since 2023, and one thing I have learned is that if somebody does not want to have sex with you, there is very little you can do to change that. In many cases, lack of desire for sex stems from early experiences and not from the current partner. So, in many cases, your options are to accept it or leave. I did not leave, but I should have both times. Sexually, I compare myself to a prisoner of war coming home after the war and having no idea how to live a normal sexual life. Story 33. I'm all for intimacy, but sex every day would get old fast for me. Every other day or every 2 days is good. I think the problem I experienced with sex frequency was when my last ex said, I am turned on 24/7 on our first date. She upheld that claim for a while and then abruptly stopped. Aside from that, the frequency of sex has not been an issue in previous relationships. Story 34. Just as many women complain about too little sex as men do, it is not a situation where men or women are bad. Each person has a certain frequency they desire, and that frequency changes over time. Some men want sex daily, others once or twice a month. Some women want sex once a week, while others want it twice a day. There is some truth in needing to find someone with a similar drive, but dissatisfaction with sex in a relationship is almost never the actual problem. Frustration about sex is usually a symptom of larger issues such as respect, communication, mental and physical health. Story 35. It is not a problem in all relationships. At least, it is usually not the primary or root cause of the problem. It is often a symptom toward the end of many relationships because, if you like the other person less, sex will probably decrease. Story 36. I am pretty lucky, to be honest. My wife and I both have high sexual drives, so we have sex basically every day. If we do not, it is rare that we go more than 2 nights without having sex. Story 37. Usually, women do not get as much pleasure from sex. Look at any discussion or forum surrounding women. Women are often sexually interested. Most complaints seem to be about issues outside the bedroom, such as unequal division of chores, or that the partner does not care about her orgasms. In short, it is about her pleasure, especially if he is unwilling to learn what she needs. Men often focus on their own pleasure. Many women do not reach orgasm from that alone. This leads to discrepancies, poor communication on both sides, stubbornness, and pride. In general, any relationship will slow down unless maintained. However, people prefer spontaneous chemistry and think that when the honeymoon phase ends, their partner is no longer attracted to them. This is not true. Scheduling sex may feel unnatural to some, but it is important to keep falling in love with your partner, choosing them, and making time for each other. Story 38. Not in all relationships. People often complain a lot online. If things are going well, who really interrupts that happiness by talking about it online? Sad and upset people complain loudly, while happy people have very little to say because they want to enjoy their moment. Story 39. I would say it is based on sex drive and time. It is common that men want sex more. Of course, there are women with high sex drives partnered with men with low sex drives. To generalize, I find that men desire sex more, and women desire closeness and emotional connection. Both can overlap and can change between sexes. Story 40. Most relationships are monogamous and based on the premise that intimacy, including hugging, kissing, intimate conversation, and sexual activity, should occur with only one person. The standard is that both partners agree to be exclusively intimate with each other. When this agreement is ignored, it becomes a problem because there is only one source of intimacy. Story 41. Every couple goes through ups and downs, even more so if you have children. You communicate with your partner, you compromise, and you figure out a way to get through the difficult times. In my opinion, there are two major issues usually at play when people talk about the quantity of sex being a problem. 1. Mismatched libidos. 2. People who have the wrong idea about what sex is and should be as part of a relationship. Story 42. I was 1.5 years in a relationship without any sexual activity. The lack of sexual intimacy was a problem for me, although I never blamed her. She has autism, finds intimacy difficult, and is also asexual. After this 1.5 years, I ended the relationship due to this and a few other reasons. Story 43. Sexual compatibility is more important than frequency, in my opinion. There are relationships where sex occurs daily and both partners are satisfied, and there are relationships where sex might only happen monthly, but both partners are still satisfied. Story 44. I'm married to a beautiful woman. After we were married, she told me anytime I want to make love, she is available 24/7. 50 years of love. Story 45. Some psychologists say that women's libido typically decreases in long-term relationships. After the honeymoon stage of 1 to 3 years passes, sex becomes less frequent. That seems to be true in my experience. A little disclaimer. No, the reason was not illness, medication, or any other circumstances. It had a huge effect on me. Over time, desire started to be associated with negativity, so I genuinely lost my sex drive. Sex is something I may do, but not something I seek. Story 46. Some want a lot. Some want a little. If you have children, you have to wait. Sometimes one person is tired while the other desires intimacy. People go through hormonal changes. Age is a factor. Sometimes personal compatibility and sexual compatibility are very different. Story 47. My ex-husband was the opposite. He was not intimate with me. Yes, it was important, and I eventually left. I do blame him. I told him directly what was making me leave, and he did not care. He would not go to a doctor or talk to me. At that point, it was on him. Story 48. We have been married for 28 years and together for 32 years. Sex and intimacy issues are something we have never had. We always make it a priority. Even when the children were little and life was busy, we had sex daily or almost daily. Sometimes I initiate, sometimes he does. We have been through babies, illness, teenagers, stressful job situations, and more. We are now empty nesters, and I am in full menopause. We still have sex 3 to 5 times a week. I truly believe the more sex you have, the more you want it. If you neglect your sex life, you can both easily stop wanting it. For me, sex is a necessity like eating or showering. I will find the time to make it happen. Story 49. Generally speaking, men benefit more from sex than women do. For women, there is always the risk of pregnancy. The solution is birth control, which can cause hormonal imbalances and decrease libido. Also, only 18% of women can orgasm from penetration alone, which many men may not know. Other hormonal differences include that women need more sleep than men and experience menstruation with related side effects. This is not to say women do not crave sex or want to feel desired. but hormones play a significant role in why many women experience periods of low libido and less frequent sexual desire. Men typically have higher libido due to higher androgen levels, and the orgasm gap is a real phenomenon. Women often have fewer orgasms than men. These statements are general and do not apply to everyone, but many men encounter these issues, and hormones significantly impact women's physical, mental, and emotional well-being daily. It is important to keep this in mind. Story 50. It isn't. The algorithm just presents you with that version of reality in order to get you to engage with it. With that said, sexual compatibility is important, no doubt about it, but I don't think it should be a deal breaker either. I say that because there is a very important time axis that's rarely mentioned in these conversations. A woman's libido can vary significantly throughout her life for a range of reasons. Use of birth control or other medications, hormone changes during and after pregnancy, perimenopause and menopause itself, among others. Of course, you were very sexually active in your 20s, but it's not realistic to expect that to continue long-term. A good relationship should be resilient enough to handle that. Story 51. I think it is very common because in today's society many people aim very high early on, and the person they end up with feels like they settled. This negatively impacts their ability to connect intimately with any passion or frequency. There is also the issue of casual sex desensitizing people to the monotony of monogamous sexual relationships. Story 52. It's a problem in many relationships. Women are also going without and becoming sexually unsatisfied. This seems to be a problem in society in general. People do not want to have sex like they used to. Pornography has become a significant issue affecting people's sexual expectations in the bedroom. Sex depicted in movies or shows is unrealistic compared to how many people are actually regularly having sex. It is sad. Sex is not as important in relationships as it used to be, and maybe that is why many people are not staying together these days. Not enough oxytocin is being released. Story 53. I find it interesting how many men criticize women who are more sexual and say they will only marry a woman with a low number of past partners, not realizing the consequences. They choose a woman with a lower sex drive or who does not know how to find her own pleasure to feel more masculine, and then complain that she is not sexual enough. While this is not always why intimacy declines, I do not understand it. Story 54. It would not be much of a problem for me since any amount of sexual activity is more than the zero amount I currently have. Story 55. Well, it is. In our case, though, we are not blaming anyone but ourselves and trying to get better at it. Like yesterday, my wife was going out to a work function later, so she went to bed and rested for a couple of hours. Then I got a little tired and went to bed. I saw that I woke her, so I spooned her a bit, and then it was on. Nothing planned, just getting affectionate with each other like teenagers, so my advice is to try to be more like teenagers since that apparently works. The problem in our case is that we are getting older and don't have the energy, and waking the other when they finally sleep feels rude, so we have to wait for the perfect opportunity. That is why right now we don't have as much intimacy as we both want. But we keep trying. Story 56. Make it count, so a replay has to happen. It is not just the act but everything leading to it that is important. Story 57. In my experience, the issue was sexual incompatibility. My drive was, and still is, pretty high. I am not talking about multiple times every day, but most days. Sometimes early on, the excitement of newness temporarily causes some people to want more than their norm. When things revert to the baseline, that desire can fade. I will also say I had a spouse who would withhold sex as a punishment, which is very unhealthy. I wish I had realized that was the issue while we were still married. Story 58. Nothing is a problem in all relationships. Some people have a lot of sex with their partner decades into a relationship. Those are rare, though. Yes, we do consciously or subconsciously blame women for it because if we do everything we can and everything you ask to make you want to have sex with us, the only other party that bears responsibility and can be blamed is the partner. I am currently having an adequate amount, but if I did not, I would first talk to my partner, see what she feels, and if our sex drives were really that different and there was nothing I or she could do to bridge the gap, I would break up. Story 59. Men struggle with understanding the differences in male and female sexuality, and that what arouses men is not the same as what creates desire in women. Reading Come As You Are helped me learn quite a bit about the physiological mechanisms behind arousal and desire. Much of it is about comfort and security. Story 60. Firstly, if you are not sexually compatible, meaning not just it's good, but also that you want it as much as they do, then you probably should not be in a relationship. I would say that after a certain age it would not matter as much, but even that seems incorrect because older people can have high sex drives. I am talking about people aged 60 and above. Most men feel bad about asking for sex, especially if they receive constant rejection from their girlfriend or wife. They may also be made to feel bad by comments like, "Is that all you think of?" Or, "Am I just a sex doll to you?" As a result, they give up and stay miserable. Some cheat. Some leave and they are made out to be the bad guys. I do think cheaters are in the wrong. They could have left and then started a new relationship. Is this a problem in all relationships? I would say a significant number, yes. I cannot say all because I have not witnessed every relationship. Do I blame women for this? I blame those who do not put in any effort and behave as I described above. Recently, I saw a post where a woman was on medication that lowered her sex drive. Is that a valid excuse? Yes. However, in the context of that post, the woman told the man to initiate more. He did, but she kept rejecting him, which damaged his self-esteem. He tried to help by suggesting she speak to a doctor to adjust her medication, counseling, and other options. She declined everything and started making him feel guilty for wanting intimacy. If I recall correctly, he broke up with her and asked whether he did the right thing. In that context, yes, I blame the woman. There are many different situations, so blame should depend on each case. I am not in a relationship now, but when I was, it was not as frequent as I would have liked. When I was with a man, it was enough, but when I was with a woman, it was not, and I always initiated. With a man, we both initiated. So there you go. Story 61. Meanwhile, many of my female friends complain about the lack of intimacy in their relationships. It is not a one-sided problem. Story 62. Sex is a love language. It builds intimacy and connection. The lack of sex means the love is not being felt as much. I once heard a good analogy: you do not buy a house for the toilet, but you certainly would not buy a house that does not have a toilet. That is to say, sex is not the reason you are in a relationship, at least for me, but no non-asexual man would gladly be in a sexless relationship. Story 63. First off, it is not a sex problem. Lack of sexual intercourse and lack of intimacy with your partner is just a symptom of a bigger problem. How many men can relate to having had a great sex life with their female partners during dating and then experiencing an excruciating dry spell that can span years entirely after marriage? This can be caused by many different factors, everything from lack of attraction, feelings of resentment, and bitterness building up from long-term relationships. It seems that, for most men, the longer you are with a woman and the more loyal and generous you are to her, the more women lose attraction and even interest in the relationship entirely. You could be doing everything right, yet she could still leave you for another man by tomorrow. Some women even get upset when you are too nice to them and give them too much. For men, sex is more often a reward rather than actual intimacy within the relationship. Even though regular sex is very important in a relationship or marriage for men, there are hundreds who will give it up and stop asking for it just to keep the relationship going. That is sad. Many men deal with anxious thoughts about why she stopped having sex or why she refuses to talk about it, which is something many find taboo after a period of not receiving sex. Is she cheating? Does she not want me anymore? Why does she not want to talk about it? Why is she distancing herself from me? Does she want to leave or divorce me? What is going on? These questions are probably going through many men's minds when they experience this. There is something deeply wrong in your relationship if you cannot talk about it. Unfortunately, most men double down, become desperate, give more, and demand answers, putting the relationship in trouble. Or they cheat and move on to a new woman who freely gives sex. That is not right. But there is something wrong when you are chastised for seeking sex elsewhere after being cut off without reason or explanation. Women do not owe men sex, and that is understood. However, maybe you cannot expect to have a decent relationship or marriage without sex. It does not work both ways. Personally, I would be concerned if there are long periods of time in a relationship or marriage with no sex, and I would probably consider leaving. Sure, there are hiccups and recovery times. She had your kids, you lost your job, or neither is feeling up for it on the weekend. But never. That is not a relationship or marriage. That is a sexless roommate agreement, and the vast majority of men do not want that. Story 64. The problem is not just the quantity, it is the quality. Women are typically passive in relationships and sex. When men are the ones doing all the work, such as initiating sex 95% of the time, sex becomes the only way they feel desired and intimate. Women get to feel that all the time through men showing appreciation, compliments, and pursuing. If women put in more effort and initiated sex as often, then the quantity would not really matter. Story 65. Sex for men equals desire, intimacy, and connection. Would you want a relationship without it? If they are not sleeping with you, they do not like you. Of course, not all cases are like this. Story 66. Well, there are many men who view sex as an emotional exchange for boyfriend behaviors. At some point, the relationship becomes stale, and the woman withdraws from giving sex. That is why I tell men that relationships are the worst way to have a good sex life. Relationships require too much effort for sex. Enter a relationship because you want to be with that person and share your life with her. Any other reason will lead to disappointment. Story 67. I am a girl, but why do you think the amount of sexual activity is a problem in all relationships? I have a high sex drive, and in every relationship I have been in, I was probably interested most of the time, except when I am on my period. I think it depends on who you date and whether your sex drives are compatible. Story 68. It's not just men. It's almost guaranteed that both partners will have different sex drives, and that those will change over time. You just communicate what you want and are willing to engage in with your partner and find common ground. Sex shouldn't feel like a chore that you do for your partner, and you can't hold it against someone when they're going through a difficult time. Most commonly, sex drive decreases when someone is stressed, depressed, or not taking care of themselves. So it starts with doing the little things and checking in on them. Story 69. Some people really like intimacy, and it can be a real deal breaker for some in relationships. I would be happy with minimal intimacy in a relationship, but I worry I will find a partner who shares the same feeling as me. So it can be difficult for both sides. Story 70. My opinion is that it is a case of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, because it is definitely not all or even most relationships. My husband and I have an active sex life multiple times a week, and we are both still extremely attracted to each other, even though we have been together for almost a decade. People who are happy in their relationship and have an active sex life are not going online to talk about it. However, misery loves company, so people go online to vent, hoping to be heard and to feel they are not alone. Edit. I did not look at the subreddit I was in before I answered. Oops. Story 71. I am absolutely the aggressor in my relationship. This is not a men versus women issue. It is the person with the lower drive who holds the keys. Story 72. It comes down to two issues in my opinion. 1. People not considering sexual compatibility as important in a long-term relationship. Many people wait until they are married to have sex at all. Women being taught that sex is a dirty thing that they have to give men if they want them to like them. As a result, they do it reluctantly instead of willingly. Anyone who has been forced to eat food will tell you that you enjoy things much less when you are forced to do them compared to doing them willingly. Story 73. Is it a problem in all relationships? No. There are plenty of women with healthy libidos who understand the importance of making their partners feel desired as something more than a resource provider and daily therapist. This is not solely a male problem. In forums about relationship issues, you will find women in a similar position. They are just less represented among those suffering from this. Do I blame women who stop having sex with their partners? It depends. If your partner works, actively does their share to maintain the home, takes responsibility for the children, or you have no children, provides emotional support, and is only looking for moderate intimacy that you generally enjoy, then yes. I consider those women to be rather selfish. They do not care if their partner is emotionally dead inside as long as he continues to show up and fulfill his responsibilities. However, If your partner does not contribute to the household, does not work, and does not help with the children, I am on your side. You have a deadbeat, and that situation is difficult. These are very different situations, and I hope we can agree on that. You frequently see in online discussions and popular culture that women have a long list of things they want men to do to free their minds and reduce burdens so they can make space for physical intimacy. You will also find men who have jumped through every single hoop for years and still experience a lack of physical intimacy. There are just more endless hoops, but they are all meaningless. The constant effort never results in the desired passion or feeling of being desired. Men want to feel like their partners gain energy from the idea of being with them, just as they do from their partners. How do I handle it? Like most men who have been married for a long time but seem emotionally absent, I continue to increase effort until I reach a tipping point and then I give up. I withdraw emotional support. My needs are ignored, and everything else is prioritized. Things I do not consider priorities are treated as more important. All I ask is to be made to feel more important than whatever trivial task is at hand. If that is a no, then you will get the cold version of me. I will acknowledge you talking and respond, but you will get a robotic response in most situations because I will not share excitement over the things you value above me. I will also do things according to my own priority list with little concern for yours. You can express frustration about the order you wanted things done or what you think we should do first, but I will leave those tasks to you. We are not negotiating anymore. Your needs are not the priority. I will do what I think needs to be done, and that is it. You are not my slave, and I am not yours. My needs are not your priority, and your needs will not be mine. We will live in balance, and I expect this to be a shock as I assert that boundary instead of doing everything I can to keep you happy. As I have gotten older, I have found more sympathy for older married men. Many men just want to feel seen in their relationships by having their partners show desire for them. Otherwise, many relationships end up feeling like a second job that people stay in due to societal expectations. Please spare me responses about outlier situations or circumstances that could be solved by seeing a doctor. We are talking about two normal, healthy people here. Story 74. I have been in relationships where it was a problem. I have also been in relationships where it was the only thing that was not a problem. You will instantly notice something that only comes up when it is lacking in a biased way. People do not make posts about how perfectly fine they are with the amount of sex they are having. Story 75. It's not just sex. However, sex is an important part. Cannot is different from will not, and of course there are barren times. Story 76. It is all based on the sex drive. Most people have an average sex drive. Some people have a very low sex drive, and then there are people like me who are hypersexual. I could have sex 5 times a day and still want more. Story 77. There are also many posts about women complaining about not getting enough intimacy. This is not just a men's problem. Story 78. Because we marry people we're compatible with in life, and that doesn't necessarily line up with having mind-blowing chemistry in bed. I'm a very passionate and sexual person, and I spent a decade in a practically sexless marriage because we had no chemistry, yet had a great, mutually supportive relationship with a lot in common. Life compatibility was important at that stage, when we were just starting a family together. All the falsities eventually come to the surface. Pretending not to have needs because it's easier than admitting that none of them are being met eventually led me to depression, killed my self-esteem, and gave me substance abuse issues. I met my current boyfriend a couple of years after divorcing my ex, fell in love, and my God, after spending a decade thinking sex was something I had to mentally prepare for every few months. Horrifying, I know. Now at 40, I feel my body literally attached to my boyfriend and not want to let go as long as we're around each other. He's all I want to do all day. That said, sex is amplified tenfold because of how much love and care people show one another. The best chemistry will die down if your partner is not showing up for you in life. So if your chemistry's good, protect it by giving each other love, care, and attention daily, even in small ways. If your chemistry is not good from the start, run. Edit. I'm a woman and just noticed the subreddit name after I posted. Hope I didn't break any rules. Story 79. It is not always the woman's fault that sexual activity decreases, but it is more often than not. Men are simpler. Most men can just do it and do not need everything to be perfect. For me, sex is literally making love to my wife. I feel connected and passionate with her during it. My thought is, how in the world could this be something you would want less of? Afterwards, we feel glowing and happy for the rest of the night, and I am often giddy with her the next morning. I want that feeling constantly. She is okay with once a week or every other week, which does not work for me. The way I deal with not getting what I want is to masturbate to keep my urges controlled. I have been paying attention to my body a lot this year and have found that after a couple of days without an orgasm, I get pretty handsy and start to upset her, so I try to keep that in check. After 3 days without an orgasm, I am horny all day and am guaranteed to experience discomfort by the evening. Also, after 4 or 5 days without sex, regardless of masturbation, I start to get grumpy with her and sex becomes all I can think about. That was me yesterday, and then I told her in the evening, "Hey, I want you tonight." It has been like 4 days since the last time, and I literally could not stop thinking about you the whole time I was on my walk this evening. She said, "I do not really want to. I just started menstruating, and you also were not very nice to me today." Blocked by her period again. Story 80. A woman here chiming in to say it is not always the woman. I have an extremely high sex drive, but my partner does not. We have conversations about our wants and needs regularly and constantly try to do better for each other. Story 81. I don't think it's a problem in all relationships, and honestly, if all men in all relationships felt like they weren't having enough sex, I would say that's probably an issue with men in general. I think your perception of it as a widespread issue comes from browsing forums online where people seek relationship advice. I would point out that men don't typically post in those forums saying, "Sex is great in my relationship and there are no issues," very often, so that point of view is underrepresented. You don't take your car to the mechanic when it's running fine. As for how you handle it, well, as someone who has been through that situation, I would say that if you can, leaving the relationship is probably the best option. Usually, you are just sexually incompatible with that person. But if you can't or don't want to go directly to that outcome, then your only option is to have a conversation with your partner. Blaming them for the issue, whether strictly accurate or not, is poor practice in these situations. After all, it takes two to tango. As I said, you will often find that you are probably just incompatible with that person, and you may have to reevaluate if this is something you are willing to live with or if it's time to move on. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.